The North Lincolnshire Council has had to put out a statement asking people to stop painting St George's flags on roundabouts. The Champagne Socialist even called somebody out for painting the Swiss flag on a roundabout. People act like this is the ultimate symbol of Englishness, but it just is not. The origin story of this flag and how it arrived in Britain is papal propaganda from the Roman Catholic Church. What part of this is feeling English to you? Also, roundabouts are French. This is the least ridiculous image that I can find of St. George. Most of the imagery depict him like this, slaying dragons. Is the first clue not the fact that dragons are not real? St. George was a Roman soldier executed under Diocletian persecution of Christians. So St. George was from here in Turkey. His father was a Roman officer and his mother was actually from Palestine. In the year 303, Diocletian launched a persecution campaign against Christians. St. George was arrested, tortured, and executed. He became a martyr in Eastern Europe in the Byzantine Empire first, because despite being tortured, he refused to give up his beliefs. That's the story of St. George. These ideas of slaying dragons and rescuing maidens, they are later, much later medieval additions. Why the emergence of these flags are deeply troubling to legends like the Champagne Socialists is because they know defense of the Crusades always just comes from white nationalist racism. So the Romans crucified him because they were clamping down, because early Christianity posed a huge threat to their authority. They never meant to make him a martyr, but in doing so, his story spreads even further. The earliest churches built for him are in Lydda in Palestine. By the 6th century, which is 300 years later, his feast day was in the Roman calendar. By the 7th and 8th century, stories of him have crossed Europe. In 1095, the Pope calls on Christian rulers to invade Palestine and Syria. They tell these knights they need to liberate Jerusalem, but the Crusades were categorically and very clearly economic conquest for the Pope. They slaughter Muslims, Jews, and Eastern Christians. They don't care. They destroy cities and enslave people to bring back to Europe for sale. There's the financial motivation. The propaganda is religious. The European rulers, kings, elites, aristocrats used the Crusades to enrich themselves in a few ways. What could be brought back, certainly. But also, when the knights went to Jerusalem, they didn't always come back. And their lands or freeholds or properties could then be absorbed. Ordinary men across Europe died in vast numbers. They were manipulated to fight for the economic advantage of a few. And this flag was the banner that they flew. The Knights Templar became the first transnational bankers. It was them that held the credit and deposits and the estates, the trusts of knights going to fight. They got insanely rich and started building castles. They were able to run estates from these stone enclosures. And they got so wealthy that they started to threaten the king. I'm almost halfway through my story and I'm still over here on the map. We have not got to here at all. All of this was happening here. So why is it England's flag? Enter colonial shipping. So Genova in the 12th century was the strongest naval republic in the Mediterranean. Its wealth came from its shipping and trade routes. The Red Cross was their naval insignia first. Ships marked with it had Jenny's protection. I'm sure I could find more masculine imagery of Richard the Lionheart, but this is so cute. So Richard I of England, Lionheart, had been deeply involved in the Third Crusade. Imagine you are a noble in England in 1095. You hold a bit of land and your wealth is coming from the peasants who farm that land. You are bound in loyalty to the king, but he is also bound in loyalty to the church. There's no TikTok. There isn't even books. Your information comes from priests, bishops, and travelling messengers. In 1095, Pope Urban II holds a council in France where he makes a big, passionate speech, papal propaganda, calling all Christian rulers across Europe to send armies to Jerusalem. It's emotional, it's passionate, it's Churchill level influence, and everybody's doing it. You are not a cool ruler if you don't have an army to send for a crusade. Word in this network also travels incredibly slowly. The speech is written into sermons and letters and passed through church networks. Part of why the church has so much control and influence in this era and beyond is because they are TikTok. If you don't go to Mass, you don't get any news. You have no idea what's going on in Europe. What you as an English noble hear is that somewhere in a holy city, Christians like me are suffering. And the Pope is calling all of these people together who have traditionally fought among themselves. So it's quite an empowering thing to go on this mission that feels bigger than yourself. Along the journey to Jerusalem, you might meet French nobles and armies and German nobles and armies, and all of these people that you've traditionally hated are now unified, banded together, this brother in arms to go and fight for the dignity of Christianity. It's also not optional. You're called to go. The church at this point was not a community for poor Christians. Not anymore. It had been co-opted by the Roman political machinery. In this context, the Pope in Rome is basically acting like a spiritual Caesar. Most people who are bishops, who are spreading these messages, they're not knights. They do not go to Jerusalem. They are landowners, nobles, power brokers, and allegedly pedophiles. This was medieval mass media. The Catholic Church in Christian Europe was the Roman Empire wearing a Jesus hat, and violence is sold as holy. The truth of the Crusades is that they were financed by merchants and landowners and people who wanted access to trade routes in the Middle East, kind of like today. So the Red Cross was a known symbol of crusader imagery, and having it fly on your navy was a sign that you had Italian protection. Richard actually paid the Italians for the right to use this flag, basically buying into this naval insurance syndicate. What my long-winded historical ramble is trying to get at is never in the history of this flag has it been a people's emblem or an English symbol. It was a commercial logo for hired naval power. Ordinary Englishmen were fooled into carrying this flag into wars that they were fighting on behalf of bankers and kings who lied to them and said they had a religious obligation. It has actually always been a symbol of the elite's ability to manipulate you. There is no shame in being proud of where you come from. It has always baffled me as an outsider in London why the English are so passionate about holding on to this symbol of mercantile insurance capitalism, and yet nobody can tell me who Wat Tyler was. Question to the people drawing the St. George's flags everywhere. Do you know what this flag is? Or this one? Or this one? Or any of these? Have you been told your history? Or do you just think you're a crusading European? Because there's a lot of things that Britain can be proud of, but this is not one of them.